Pope lands at O'Hare for a week-long conference and hires a limo to take him into the city. As they approach the Eisenhower, the Pope asks the driver if he can take the wheel on the way to downtown. The driver agrees, and soon the Pope is racing down 1294 with the limo driver enjoying a sandwich in the back seat. A few miles down the road, however, the speeding limo is pulled over by a state trooper. The cop takes one look at the situation and radios in to police headquarters. He tells the chief that he's got a pretty important person on his hands. The police chief asks, "Is he more important than the mayor?" Yes. Is he more important than the governor? Yes. Is he more important than the president? I think so. Come on. How important can he be? The cop warily replies, I don't know, but he's got the Pope for a chauffeur. A lawyer was interviewing for a corporate legal position. The personnel director looks up from the lawyer's resume and says, "Your credentials are pretty impressive, but I've seen all kinds of credentials. Tell me something, are you an honest attorney?" Honest, the lawyer replies, "Let me tell you what kind of attorney I am. My father lent me $20,000 for law school. I paid him back in full, every cent, after my very first case." The personnel director nods approvingly. That is impressive. What was the case? The lawyer replies, "He sued me for the money." The father and son go fishing one day. While they're out in the boat, the boy suddenly becomes curious about the world around him. He asks his father, "How does this boat float?" The father replies, "Don't rightly know, son." A little later, the boy looks at his father and asks, "How do fish breath underwater?" Again, the father replies, "Don't rightly know, son." A short time after that, the boy asks his father, "Why is the sky blue?" Once again, the father replies, "Don't rightly know, son." The son asks, "Dad, do you mind me asking you all of these questions?" The father replies, "Of course not, son. If you don't ask questions, you won't ever learn nothing." A man tells a doctor, "I think my wife's going deaf. What can I do?" The doctor says, "Well, try to test her hearing. Stand some distance away from her and ask her a question. If she doesn't answer, move a little closer and ask again. Keep repeating this until she answers. That way we can see how bad the problem is." The man goes home, sees his wife, and says, "Hi, honey, what's for dinner?" He doesn't hear an answer, so he moves closer. "Honey, what's for dinner?" Still no answer. He repeats this several times until he's standing right next to her. "Honey, what's for dinner?" She answers, "For the 10th time, I said we're having pot roast." A psychiatrist in an asylum is making his normal nightly rounds. He enters one patient's room to find the man calmly laying on his bed with his arms out in front of him, staring at his hands. Meanwhile, another patient is in the room, hanging from the ceiling by his feet. The doctor asks the first patient what he's doing. "Oh, I'm just doing a little reading before I go to bed." The patient replies, "And why is your friend hanging from the ceiling?" The doctor asks. In a conspiratorial tone, the patient says, "Well, doc, don't tell him I said so, but he's a little crazy. He thinks he's a light bulb. Don't you think you should get him down from there before he hurts himself?" Asks the doctor, "What?" The patient exclaims, "How do you expect me to read in the dark?" Two doctors, Jenkins and Smith, are treating a man with lung disease. They're explaining how him smoking weed led to his condition worsening. But it's just herbal. The patient protested. How could it be bad? Dr. Jenkins sighed. Apricot stones contain lethal amounts of cyanide. There is a certain plant in my back garden. If you sit under it for just 10 minutes, you will die. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe for you. The man seemed to accept that. And after he and the doctors parted ways, Dr. Smith asked, "What is that plant that kills you if you sit under it?" Dr. Jenkins replies, "A water lily." After making love, the man excused himself and went into the bathroom. When he returned, the woman sat up in bed and remarked, "I can tell you are a doctor by the way you washed your hands before and after." Well, that's right. the fellow said with a self-satisfied grin. Do you know what kind? The woman replied, I would say an anesthesiologist. How did you know? Asked the MD. She responded, because throughout the entire procedure, I did not feel a thing. A man was sitting on the edge of the bed, observing his wife, looking at herself in the mirror. Since her birthday was not far off, he asked what she'd like to have for her birthday. I'd like to be 6 again, she replied, still looking in the mirror. On the morning of her birthday, he arose early, made her a nice big bowl of Lucky Charms, and then took her to Six Flags theme park. What a day. He put her on every ride in the park, the Death Slide, Wall of Fear, Screaming Monster roller coaster, everything there was. 5 hours later, they staggered out of the theme park. Her head was reeling and her stomach felt upside down. He then took her to a McDonald's where he ordered her a Happy Meal with extra fries and a chocolate shake. Then it was off to a movie, popcorn, a soda pop, and her favorite candy, M&Ms. What a fabulous adventure. Finally, she wobbled home with her husband and collapsed into bed exhausted. He leaned over his wife with a big smile and lovingly asked, well, dear, what was it like being 6 again? Her eyes slowly opened and her expression changed. She replies, I meant my dress size, you dumbass. A prisoner in jail receives a letter from his wife to her husband. I have decided to plant some lettuce in the back garden. When is the best time to plant them? The prisoner, knowing that the prison guards read all mail, replies in a letter, dear wife, whatever you do, do not touch the back garden. That is where I hid all the money. A week or so later, he receives another letter from his wife. Dear husband, you wouldn't believe what happened. Some men came with shovels to the house and dug up the back garden. The prisoner writes back, dear wife, now is the best time to plant the lettuce. A man is strolling past the mental hospital and suddenly remembers an important meeting. Unfortunately, his watch has stopped and he cannot tell if he is late or not. Then he notices a patient similarly strolling about within the hospital fence. Calling out to the patient, the man says, pardon me, sir, but do you have the time? The patient calls back, one moment, and throws himself upon the ground, pulling out a short stick as he does. He pushes the stick into the ground and, pulling out a carpenter's level, assures himself that the stick is vertical. With a compass, the patient locates north and with a steel ruler measures the precise length of the shadow cast by the stick. Withdrawing a slide rule from his pocket, the patient calculates rapidly, then swiftly packs up all his tools and turns back to the pedestrian, saying, it is now precisely 3:29 p.m., provided today is August 16th, which I believe it is. The man can't help but be impressed by this demonstration and sets his watch accordingly. Before he leaves, he says to the patient, that was really quite remarkable, but tell me, what do you do on a cloudy day? Or at night, when the stick casts no shadow? The patient holds up his wrist and says, well, then I suppose I just look at my watch.